racist cop arrests a black man unlawfully and is hit with karma when he finds out who he is. James Whitaker stood outside the Maple Ridge Cafe on Brighton Avenue, idly scrolling through his phone as he waited for his takeout order. It was a busy day downtown, the midday heat rising off the sidewalks in shimmering waves, the clamor of cars, the murmur of conversations, and the sounds of the city surrounded him. But Whitaker was at ease. He had his day off, and a quick meal seemed like the perfect way to enjoy the afternoon. His mind drifted as he stood there, oblivious to the growing attention on him. Across the street, Officer John Mercer sat in his patrol car, eyes locked on Whitaker like a hawk zeroing in on prey. Mercer had seen Whitaker walk down the street, confidence in every step, and that nagging suspicion had only grown since then. To Mercer, Whitaker stood out in a way that he couldn't quite articulate. Something about him felt off, though he couldn't place it. His uniformed instinct, or so he told himself, kept whispering that Whitaker didn't belong here. Too comfortable for someone like him, Mercer muttered under his breath, his grip on the steering wheel tightening. He wasn't aware of it, but his thoughts had already formed a dangerous narrative, a narrative driven not by logic, but by the prejudices ingrained deep within him. Whitaker's calm demeanor felt like a challenge, his composure an affront. In Mercer's mind, Whitaker's ease in this part of town didn't sit right, didn't align with the stories Mercer had told himself about people like him. The seconds dragged on. Mercer watched as Whitaker scrolled through his phone, seemingly without a care in the world, and it only fueled his resolve. His suspicions were taking root, growing more substantial with each passing moment. Mercer wasn't thinking clearly anymore. It wasn't about the facts. It was about how he felt. And right now, he felt like something was wrong. Mercer pushed open his door and stepped out of his patrol car, his hand resting instinctively on his belt. The sun was bright overhead, but he walked with purpose, his gaze never leaving Whitaker as he crossed the street. Each step was filled with determination, and with each step, his assumptions grew firmer. In his mind, Whitaker's calmness had morphed into guilt. There had to be something behind that unflappable demeanor. James Whitaker looked up from his phone just in time to see Officer Mercer approaching. The officer's eyes bore into him with a sharp intensity, but Whitaker didn't flinch. He'd been here before. This wasn't his first encounter with law enforcement. A black man in America knew all too well the delicate dance required in these moments. Stay calm, stay polite, and most importantly, stay aware. Inside, Whitaker braced himself. He could sense where this was going, though he had done nothing wrong. His hands remained at his sides, visible and unthreatening, while his heart beat just a little faster. "Afternoon," Mercer greeted, his voice flat, his posture rigid. "What brings you to this area today?" Whitaker kept his face neutral, nodding politely. "Just grabbing some lunch, waiting for my order." Mercer's eyes scanned him up and down, not hearing the words, only processing the image in front of him. The casual clothes, the phone, the ease with which Whitaker answered. To Mercer, it was all wrong. He wasn't looking for an answer. He was looking for a reason. "Can I see some ID?" Mercer asked, his voice tightening. Whitaker exhaled softly. He'd expected this. He kept his tone respectful but firm. "Officer, have I done something wrong?" The question was innocent, simple, but to Mercer it felt like a direct challenge to his authority. His jaw clenched. Whitaker's calmness was now feeding Mercer's irritation, stirring something deep within him. Mercer leaned forward, his presence becoming more imposing. "I asked you to show me your ID. Do you have a problem with that?" Mercer's tone had sharpened, and with it, the tension in the air thickened. Several people nearby glanced over, sensing the brewing conflict, but none stepped forward. Whitaker held the officer's gaze, though his heart raced faster now. He'd been down this road before, too many times. He nodded, reaching slowly into his pocket to retrieve his wallet. "I don't have a problem, officer. Just asking why you need it." Mercer's eyes flared with frustration. To him, Whitaker's questions felt like resistance, an affront to his authority. This was supposed to be simple, routine, but Whitaker wasn't acting like the type of man who knew his place. In Mercer's mind, it wasn't just about the ID anymore. It was about putting Whitaker in his place. Loitering, for starters, Mercer snapped, his voice rising. You're standing here like you've got nowhere to be. Whitaker blinked, confusion crossing his face. I'm waiting for my order, he repeated, his voice measured, but the situation was already spiraling out of control. He could see it in the officer's eyes. This wasn't about loitering. There was no logic behind the accusation. Before we dive deeper into what happens next, let me ask you, do you think Officer Mercer's actions so far were justified? If, like many, you feel they weren't, show your support by hitting that like button. And what do you think Mercer should have done instead? Comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you enjoy stories on social justice, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Your support helps me continue creating content that matters. Mercer's hand inched toward his radio, his irritation boiling just beneath the surface. Turn around, he ordered, the calm authority in his voice giving way to something harsher. Hands against the wall. A jolt of disbelief shot through Whitaker. What? Officer, I haven't... Turn around, Mercer's voice barked, loud enough to draw the attention of several bystanders. His patience had snapped, and any semblance of protocol or reason had disappeared. In his mind, Whitaker's calmness had become a provocation, and now Mercer was intent on proving his dominance. Whitaker stood frozen for a moment, weighing his options. He knew how quickly things could escalate, how easily a situation like this could turn tragic. So, with a deep breath, he complied. Slowly, he turned and placed his hands against the brick wall of the cafe, his body tense but controlled. Mercer stepped closer, grabbing Whitaker's arm with unnecessary force as he moved to cuff him. Whitaker winced as the metal clamped tightly around his wrists, the roughness of Mercer's grip sending a shock of pain through his shoulder. The officer shoved him harder than necessary, pressing him against the wall, and Whitaker's ankle twisted beneath him, sending him stumbling. The situation had escalated far beyond reason, and all Whitaker could do was hold on, bracing for what might come next. The moment Whitaker hit the wall, it was as though the thin veil of civility between him and Officer Mercer had been ripped away. The pressure from Mercer's grip was relentless, and the searing pain in Whitaker's shoulder only worsened as the officer pinned him tightly against the brick. Whitaker sucked in a sharp breath, but he remained silent. He knew better than to give Mercer any reason to escalate the situation further. You match the description of a suspect, Mercer spat, his voice dripping with disdain. There have been thefts around here. Seems to me like you're the type to fit that profile. Whitaker's head spun as he tried to grasp the absurdity of the accusation. A suspect? Theft? It was clear that Mercer was grasping at straws. Whitaker hadn't done anything suspicious. He was simply waiting for his meal. But logic and reason had already fled from the scene, replaced by Mercer's unshakable belief that something about Whitaker was wrong. For Whitaker, none of this was new. The racial profiling, the accusations without basis, the sharp escalation, it had become an all-too-familiar pattern in his life. But this time, the stakes felt higher. The physical pain in his shoulder was growing more intense, and Mercer's aggression had crossed the line from routine harassment into something more dangerous. You're making a mistake, Whitaker said, his voice calm despite the pain radiating through his body. He wanted to remain composed, but he knew that one wrong move, one perceived act of defiance, could turn this encounter into something far worse. Shut your mouth, Mercer snapped, shoving him harder against the wall. I know exactly what I'm doing. Whitaker gritted.